I think I'm passionate about wanting to leave this industry better than I found it. I think would be something that motivates me. I want to make positive change.
This is Luke Norris from Luke Pools in Alpharetta, Georgia, and you're listening to the Pool Chasers Podcast.
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers Podcast. What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us today on the Pool Chasers Podcast. Our mission is to help educate and inspire in the form of a podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us, Brett Gereau. Brett is currently the owner of an advanced pool specialist and one of the people we have most looked up to in the industry for quite a while now. So thank you for joining us today, Brett.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Love the place you got here. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you very much. So you've had quite the journey through the pool industry, and we're going to jump into all of that soon. But first, can you please tell us a little bit about, your childhood, where you grew up, and, just maybe what helped shape who you are today?
I'm from Orange County, California, which is about 30 miles outside of L.A. To the south. Born and raised there all my life. So, 72 degrees every day, sunshine, 350 days of the year. You know the deal. Southern California is a pretty cool place for a kid to grow up.
Sounds rough.
had a great childhood. Had parents and step-parents and grandparents that loved me. Did a lot of fun things like camping and vacations and stuff like that. So, just had a great time. What shaped me today, I think growing up, my dad is a big part of that. He's very mechanically inclined. I think I learned a lot from him. My mom is a great saleswoman, and I think I get some of the sales, and she's really good with people and just passionate about loving people. So, I think those are some people who really shaped me growing up. But really just enjoyed childhood for sure.
That's really cool. Did you get, pushed heavy into your academics and things like that?
Not so much, no. I wasn't really a great classroom student. So I think my parents they gave me kind of the freedom to explore things outside of the traditional school. And I started out after high school trying to go to college. But just didn't do it for very long. Never graduated. Ended up starting a business instead. So, graduated from the School of Hard Knocks, as they say, right?
Yeah. Very good. I know we've been following you for a while, and we've known you since about 2014. And we always see that you and your family are always doing all kinds of stuff. I know you guys go hiking and mountain biking, and I think you were like water surfing sometime a couple years ago or last year or something. Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, dang, dude, he gets it. He's shredding.
We like to have fun. It's a blessing to be able to do that as a family, and so we do a lot of camping, nice. Some desert trips. That was the lake. We were doing some wake surfing at Lake Nacimiento. One of the great things about California, as you guys know, is within about 4 to 6 hours, you can do almost anything.
Yeah.
You could be at some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. You can be in some of the coolest mountains and forests. Lakes. It's just really neat. Come out here towards you guys, come to the river. There's just so much to do within 4 to 6 hours. So, yeah, we like to get out and get after it a little bit.
That's really cool. How important is, doing things outdoors and just doing things with your family? Because, it's really difficult sometimes when you're running a business, or it could just be difficult to break away a little bit. But it seems like family is really important to you.
I think so. And it wasn't always that way. I used to stress a lot more about vacations, taking time off. It's very difficult to do that, as you know, to step away from the business. And I think in the last few years, I have come to appreciate that more. I love the memories I have as a kid on some of the vacations I was with my family. And I love that I'm creating that for my kids. So I think I've really kind of grown to appreciate that better and see the value in it. So it's really important, and we try to get out and do something several times a year. Now, a lot of our trips are just a quick weekend away. We'll take off on a Friday night, be back by Sunday, and you didn't really miss a beat. But it still takes time and effort and energy throughout your work week to kind of prepare and make sure you do something like that. So it's still work, but we love doing that, and it's something we cherish as a family for sure.
That's awesome. And you want to introduce this lady over here?
Yeah, so brought my wife with me today. We just enjoyed a nice 6-hour drive over here and got a chance to talk and hang out. So glad to have my wife Christina with me here.
Good to have you.
You tried to bait her on the podcast.
Yeah, I did.
She didn't take it.
Specifically said mic off. She is mic off. But
So you guys are sitting again after 6 hours. But
no, that's okay. Maybe
you guys
she'll
talked
chime
together in
later.
Vegas, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll bring her in a little later.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us. We know how important it is to make time for your family, and it's nice because you spend so much time with your kids and your wives, and you really understand, like, dude, this is what I bust my ass for. It makes it so much sweeter to go in on Monday or whatever it is and just get after it, because you know that because of the hard work you put into it, you're able to do those kind of things.
No doubt. And it's just good to unplug too. It really just feels good. I love that idea of just kind of letting the cell phone go to airplane mode and being done and checked out.
Whoa. Airplane mode.
When you go in the middle of the desert somewhere, you don't want to leave it on because the battery will die. So yeah, sometimes some of those weekends, it's airplane mode. But yeah, or let it go to voicemail, whatever. It is fun to do that once in a while and let the hair down, as they say.
Yeah. So do your kids like what you do?
As far as pools, yeah. My kid's actually really into it. My 13-year-old's, starting to show some more interest as he's getting a little older and, wanting to learn about earning money and things like that. And I took him to
fire.
work.
That is true.
Playing with fire is always fun.
I took him to work with me a few weeks ago, and he hung in there all day, and I was real proud. I thought for sure he would have tapped out and asked Mom to come pick him up. But he hung in there the entire day, and that was cool. That was really fun. So, 13, he's a little young to be working all the time, but, throw him on the job site and, throw him on a crew once in a while. I think it's good for him.
Yeah. And his name's Brett too?
Yeah, Brett. He's the third, actually. So I'm junior.
Oh, dang.
We call him Trey for 3.
Nice.
That's really cool.
And then my other son, Connor, and then we have our daughter, Sarah, as well. So the younger two, not quite as much interest in work yet, although, they do talk about doing pools. And, I think it's a great trade to learn because you'll never not have a job.
Right.
If you live in Arizona or California or Florida and you know how to clean and maintain and work on a swimming pool, you're kind of like a mechanic. You just always have value to a marketplace. So even if that's not the career path, hey, I think it'd be a great job for them, or a career stopping point at some point. I don't know, whatever they want to do. But I think it's a cool trade, and I hope to pass it down to someone.
I think Greg Garrett mentioned that too when he said that, he taught his kids so that if they ever needed to eat, that they could just go get a job, It's something that, as we know now, everybody needs some good workers. So if you're good at it and you understand water chemistry, then you can pretty much go work there anytime. So it's cool.
And the work is so much easier now. I mean, you could go on Nextdoor in your community and somebody could say, like, does anybody know a good pool cleaner or whatever? And you'd be like, I need to pick up a little extra work. Like, I'll come do it, on the weekends or something. Like,
it's great summer job or getting started part-time. You can take on a few pools for a guy, that kind of thing. So I think it's absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, my son now says he's going to be a baseball player and a pool guy combined. I'm like, that's two totally different paths there, but that's cool, buddy. That's cool.
Try to be a baseball player, and if that doesn't work out, go ahead.
Let's focus on the baseball, and I'll teach you the rest stuff. But it's cool.
That is funny. Cool. My daughters have not showed any interest in cleaning pools, just enjoying them.
Still pretty little though. Maybe. Get the pool gal of the year or whatever award.
There we go.
You like fishing quite a bit too, right? You were telling me.
Yeah, we do. It's one of those things where you don't get out as often as you like, or at least I don't. But when we do get a chance to do it, it's a lot of fun. So I got a good friend that'll take us ocean fishing, and that's a blast. We really love that. It's a treat when we get to do that.
He takes you out on the boat, out in the deeper waters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And that's really fun. He always puts us on them.
What do you catch out there?
Shout out to Captain Chris.
Captain Chris, what's up?
Yeah.
What do you catch out there? Tuna and stuff, or you don't go that far?
Yeah, you can. Usually the trips I go on with my boys, we don't go for tuna. We'll go for stuff off the bottom, rockfish. They dig that because they can just throw the line down and just pull up whatever they want. You know, it's fun. Yellowtail's a treat. He's put us on some really nice halibut. So yeah, it's fun. It's good eating and sushi when we get home, and
There we go.
or fish tacos, whatever you catch, you know. So yeah, we have
And
a
you
good time.
barbecue quite a bit, right?
A little bit, yeah. Not too much, but sometimes, yeah. It's I dig it though. Any outdoors type stuff, it is fun. Yeah, it's so wet out there in Southern California. I forgot what a barbecue looks like.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my dad used to take us out. Remember that one time you got really sick?
Oh yeah.
You slept down in the hole, but we go deep sea fishing quite a bit. It was cool. A lot of good times. My dad gets really seasick too, but I don't know why he keeps doing it. But half the time he has a really fun time. Half the time he's like dreading it.
Yeah,
but he loves
fortunately,
it.
I don't struggle with that. It's
He warned me because I had I was young. We were in like high school,
Yeah.
senior year or something. But I'd never been deep sea fishing before, and I ate a ton of Taco Bell before going out there. And he's trying to
Bad move.
yeah. And he's like, no, just take these pills and this and that. I'm like, dude, I've been on boats before, not this kind of boat, not in the ocean. I've been on,
Right.
like Silver Lake or something. That's still, but yeah, getting out there, I was just like a wreck. I was so seasick. So
Yeah,
not
I've
so
had
much fishing.
I remember one trip we had was really sweet. Him and I combined caught like 47 tuna.
wow.
In like a 2-day period.
Killer.
Yeah, it was insane.
Slaying 'em.
It was like
Jeez.
3 huge whatever coolers like we brought
Wow.
back of tuna. That was crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That was like hook 'em up. Like we just hit those big,
That's what you
schools
call
of
a
fish.
successful trip.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that with us. As Greg mentioned before, you had quite a journey through the pool industry, and can you tell us kind of what sparked your interest in it and what made you want to kind of join the industry?
Yeah, so out of high school and doing some community college part-time, I worked for a bank, and I liked it okay. My plan was to study economics, and I kind of always wanted to be a financial planner. And so didn't have, a lot of direction on that, but that was kind of the general sense of where I was heading. But I was getting sick of my teller job at the bank. And at the time, I was going to a church where there were like 4 different pool guys that all went to this church. And it kind of started from one guy that was cleaning pools. And 10 years later, another guy who needed a career change jumped over and started cleaning pools. And then another 10 years later. And so next thing you knew, I had these guys that I was close with who had routes for 30 years, 20 years. I was thinking I want a new job, and I was at a college group one night sitting next to one of the leaders, and I said, what about cleaning pools? That's what he did. And he said, yeah, you ought to look into that. And I got started shortly after that. In fact, what happened was we had talked about it, and we're like, man, this is a pretty drastic change. I don't know, maybe this is just impulsive. Let's not do it. Well, a week later, a friend of mine called me and said, hey, are you still interested in doing that? Because I crashed my truck and my boss needs somebody now. So he got in an accident with his truck, was totaled, and they needed someone on the route. I happened to have a pickup truck, and I was so sick of my bank job, I was willing to, I gave him a week's notice and said, I'm out of here, and I started cleaning pools. I still remember the first day I cleaned pools. It was like, after being in a bank and a restaurant, I'm only like 20 years old, so I'd only had 2 jobs before, a bank and a restaurant, indoors. I'm like, people work outside? And where's like your supervisor? We're on our own right now. How does he know where we are? This is crazy. Look at the mailman. He's just driving from house to house. Look at those gardeners over there. I'm like, this is insane. These people just have jobs outside. They don't have to be in a building. I fell in love like almost instantly. I still remember the first 2 pools I ever cleaned. I never even looked at a set of equipment before in my life, right? I got the study bug. So it started as just, this is going to be a job. And after a period of time, I started to see this as a career. And I wasn't expecting that. It wasn't planned. but I've enjoyed it ever since. And since then, that was back in 2003 that I started cleaning pools.
How long did you work for that company?
So I started for him in November of 2003, and I started picking up my own accounts, which he was okay with. He was the type of guy, and I actually should mention Scott Smith, one of my great mentors and the guy that got me started in this business. He had a lot of builders in the area during that boom when we were building just so many pools, right? When the economy was booming, house value was going up, people were putting lots of money into their backyards and building pool after pool. And he was doing a ton of startups. And what he would do was he would get guys set up with routes, and eventually, if they wanted to, he would sell them their routes and kind of start them off in the business. So he had started probably before me, he probably had started 4 or 5 guys with businesses and careers of their own. So, I mean, this was a great guy to work under. He was, he holds all his knowledge with an open hand. He's more than willing to share with you anything you need to know. And I'm lucky to have called him a mentor, and I'm lucky today to call him a friend. He was an instrumental part. Well, I worked for him for, I mean, it was maybe a year total, but I just started to transition into my own pools pretty quickly.
So back then, I just want to go back to those first 2 pools. What was training like back then? I mean, were you just kind of like, hey, these are the addresses, you got to go to it? How did you get trained on these pools?
So my situation, because it was my friend who crashed his truck, he didn't have a truck, but he had a route to clean. Well, I got on his route with him, and he trained me, and we rode together for like 2 months. I kind of got more training than normal. You know, we rode together as a team. And then I eventually took over that route, and then he ended up getting his truck and getting another route of his own. So I rode with him for 2 months. The guy that trained me, though, I mean, he's not the most talkative guy. He's a buddy of mine. And so at the time, I felt like I didn't get any of the technical, you know, I just had to go into the books. And I didn't get a ton of, like, there wasn't no classroom. I mean, none of us started that way, really. It's kind of like, here, read these books, you know, and that's your understanding of chemistry. A couple of discussions. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us kind of get out and kind of learn on our own, you know, and that was my story as well.
Were you fascinated at all by the equipment is making this pool clean and clear and safe and doing all these different things at it? Because I know the first time I saw a pool, I never saw a pool like that somebody actually had to work on the equipment and had to balance water chemistry. And it was kind of, you know, a lot.
Totally. Yeah. And it was very interesting. I think it's just enough of a mechanical draw. You know, I don't know that I want to have my body in the hood of a car working on something like that, but right. I do like to work with my hands. So pools is kind of a good combination of that. You know what I mean? And so I think there was a draw there in terms of, you know, wanting to learn how all this stuff works. But yeah, I couldn't have told you. In fact, I remember standing there going, well, which way does the water go? What is this piece here? You know, what's this water heater here? That's the heater, right? No, that's the filter. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you guys ever were, but that's how green we're talking here.
Oh yeah.
And so, but yeah, it was a big draw, and it was exciting, and yeah, never looked back. I had one time in my career where I considered a transition out of this industry. And it was actually for finance again, and kind of had an opportunity presented to me that looked to be somewhat promising. Before I fully explored that, I really just had to ask the honest question of, do I want to leave this industry or not? And decided not to. So that's the kind of the one and only time that I really ever thought about, do I want to make a change out of the industry here? And I ended up not doing that.
Right. How important do you think it is in starting with cleaning pools? You know what I mean? So where you're at now, or if you want to do anything in the pool industry, even if it's working behind the counter at a brick and mortar pool store, how important do you think it is to actually be in the field and see a pool in person and see the equipment? How important do you think that is?
I think it's critical. I mean, I personally think it's probably one of the best places to start. If you're going to get into this industry, I mean, at least learn that perspective of pools. You know, I think if you are a builder, you will be a better builder if you have serviced pools, or right. a remodeler, or a manufacturer's rep. Mm-hmm. You will be a better manufacturer's rep if you've busted your knuckles trying to get this bolt apart or whatever it is.
Yep.
So I think it's huge. I know when I transitioned in from service to remodel, it helped me so much to know really how does a pool work together, all these components and the chemistry and all this stuff. And it gave me a huge advantage over my competition because I could explain to people aspects of their pool that they had always wondered about.
Yeah.
And I could explain it very well, and then they trust you. Nobody else was able to figure that out and explain that to me. Why is that? I understand, that makes sense. Let's go with what you're suggesting. You know.
That's a really good point. I mean, there's so many variables that a lot of people, if you've never serviced pools, there's so many things that you don't know. You don't know that, from the wall to the side of the house can be really narrow.
Sure.
There could be a flight of 50 stairs getting up to a pool. Just by looking at a pool in a YouTube video, maybe it looks so easy, but it's like you didn't know that the plumbing is real tight and there's these 5 pumps and it's really difficult to, get a lid off because they plumbed it right above the lid.
Right.
There's all these variables that you don't really know, but once you've actually been in the field and you've been in the trenches, you kind of know what to look out for and you can kind of prep your team a little bit better in that sense.
And I'm grateful for when I started too, because when I started, most of my equipment sets were Intermatic time clocks, right? All of them were single speed pumps. So when I started, most of my automation systems were either a time clock or a very simple Jandy system. There were no variable speed pumps. It was all single speed. There weren't the color changing LED lights. So I got to see that evolution. I got to learn like the basics. Okay, here's a time clock and a pump. And then you learn, okay, 110 versus 220. And then you learn the next thing and the next thing. Okay, automation systems are nothing more than a series of light switches. And then automation systems become smarter and smarter as they are now not just light switches, but now they can actually control the pump and tell it what speed and all that kind of stuff. So they're totally different now. They communicate as well. And it's a little more daunting to come into the industry like right now because there has been so much technology boom in the last 10 years. You kind of have a lot of catching up to do. So I feel fortunate that what I came in and learned was kind of how it was done for the 30 years prior to me. And then I got to really see a dramatic change. And I think, my age might have helped when variable speed pumps came out. And it was like, hey, this is going to be the way it is in California. That was Title 20. That's what really pushed that envelope. So for those who don't know what Title 20 is, it's an energy efficiency bill in California that mandates variable speed pumps, sort of. There's a couple other things you could do, but that's primarily what they want you to do is a variable speed pump. Well, a lot of the old crusty pool guys are just like, what is this? I'm not doing, how much is that thing? They're like, no way, that's not happening. And I just decided to embrace the technology. And I had 15 installed before most people had ever bought their first one. And so part of that might be age and not afraid to get after some new technology or try something. I think I also kind of looked at it. I was probably, 25 at the time when those came out and said, well, I'm not like 55 about to retire. I'm like 25 looking at the, rest of my career. I better learn how these things work, whether I like them or not. Obviously, it's going this way.
What were the first 15 you put in? What kind of pumps were they?
The 4x160s, the original. I did one VF and maybe two. And I did the 4x160s, which is just the 4-button, no screen. And then for a little bit, I was doing the SVRS.
That's the Pentair ones, right?
Yeah, all Pentair and Teleflows, yeah.
Yeah.
Still see some of those out
You
in the
do,
field.
yeah. You still see them out there. They're good. They're good pumps.
So at that point in time, it's a little bit different now. I feel like there's so many magazines and blogs and videos, so much information out there to kind of keep you informed on what's new and what's going on. When you were kind of adapting to some of these changes in the industry, how are you getting that information most of the time? Not saying you're still young. I'm not saying the internet wasn't around, but it's not like it is today.
2003 is probably right when Google came out, or you know what I mean? We weren't using Google yet. You
weren't sending Hotmail emails.
Google wasn't a verb at the time.
Right.
No such thing as YouTube, right? So it was a different time, even though it's not that long ago. It actually, from an internet standpoint, it's a whole world away. I learned from the guys. I learned from the guys in my IPSA chapter primarily. we had a time every month, every meeting called Helpful Hints and Cures, where we literally just throw out any question we have and all these guys answer. And, fortunately, most of the guys in my chapter, they were very open about sharing their information. That's one of the great things about IPSA is it is a camaraderie. You're all independent pool guys, supposedly competition, and there's other associations as well that do the same thing, and it's the principle of it, not which association. But yeah, you become friends, you become colleagues with one another. Mm-hmm. It was great to be a information hungry young guy and go into a chapter. These guys that have been doing it for a long, long time. There was a lot to learn from those guys. So that's primarily how I learned. And then the other thing would be, I think, like your local trade shows and your Pentair 2-day education seminars. Those are fantastic. I highly recommend those to anybody who works on equipment. Go to whichever manufacturer is yours. Go to their training they do. They all do a great job of putting on great training. Those are some of the best classes you can take.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this before, but how has it always been really important to you in anything that you've done to have relationships with other companies? Do you look at it as competition, or is it just like, hey, we're in the same industry together, let's be friends, let's kind of learn together, so to speak?
Yeah, I definitely think I have more that philosophy than one of we're competition and I'm going to keep my information from you. It's definitely one of like, hey, you know stuff that I don't know and I know stuff that you don't know. Let's talk and let's help each other out. I just think, especially at least where I'm at, there is so much work. There's so many pools. There's so much work to do. If I'm losing work to somebody who is doing a job with integrity, with excellence, and the customer's happy, I want that guy in the market. That's a good thing for my market. It's the guys that are underbidding, don't know what they're doing it incorrectly, installing equipment in such a way that it shortens its service life because it's not plumbed correctly or wired correctly or whatever the case may be. Those are the guys I don't want. So anybody who's looking for information, looking for how to do it right or better, anything like that, I'm all about that for sure. And there's been so many people that have poured that information right into me. I would not be where I am had it not been for those people. So, I definitely want to hold information with an open hand and just keep it going.
Nice. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. I mean, from when you first started till now. Have you seen even just the trade shows and everything you've been to do you ever reflect on what it was like, in 2000, what did you say,
2003? Yeah. I mean, it definitely has changed. One of the things that's changed for me that's really fun is, the Western show, my network has grown, and I just mean my friends. There's more people, like I say hi to you guys now and we talk, and I say hi to those guys and we talk. And so staying in this industry and really investing in it, investing your time at going to these shows and learning these things, you get to know more people better, and it becomes more enjoyable, and as you guys see my wife with me, she's with me at a lot of those shows. And so people know her, and it's just fun. You do have a camaraderie within the industry.
Yeah, it's crazy you say that. It makes me think now it's almost like you're kind of getting like the industry sort of gossip. We're all talking about different things that are going on that you're not going to read in a magazine. It's like, hey, did you know so-and-so is, selling their business, or did you know blah, 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 blah. And that's all stuff that you actually really need to know. Even your terminology on certain things, there's so many things that people would say. I acted like I knew, but I could use one of those too, huh?
Well, and the industry is really so regional, right? So like a guy in Florida is going to say and do things very differently than the guy in Southern California. And in some ways, they're very similar. In other ways, man, there's like two different worlds. We just do things a little different, or we see things, different types of pools for different reasons. They have different weather conditions. Northeast pool industry, I mean, I know so little about winterizing, right? You guys probably don't know much about winterizing either. Very but little. That is some people's world, so it's good to go plug into your regional shows and your regional local network of pool guys. And it is good to kind of know, what else is out there that you don't know, that, you know, because there are things that they do in Florida that we could really benefit from, or how you guys do it here in Arizona would benefit us to do it that way. So it's good to have a combination of both.
And we were just in Atlantic City for that trade show, and that was pretty eye-opening for us because majority of the conversations we had were with people who weren't even working because they make all their money in the summer and then do stuff like snow plowing and other things in the winter. And you know, that was kind of cool because a lot of them brought their teams down, whereas like at the Western or other, you pretty much just see the owners are like one or two guys because they can't afford to bring their team, right? But at that show, there was several like big teams, like, you know, 10 people there, and so where they could afford, because they weren't working, they could bring them to train, which I thought was a cool
You know
aspect.
what that would help with? I didn't even think about this until now, but that would totally help with pool guy burnout.
Yeah.
If you're not cleaning
Exactly.
pools 50 weeks of the year, so I mean, I don't know from an income perspective how they can do it,
Right.
but I mean, from a pool guy burnout perspective, man, what a dream, right? Just clean pools in the summer.
But it gives you that time to you know, get educated in the off time,
Totally.
and clean up the warehouse, do maintenance on vehicles. There's all kinds of different things that, you know, you could be doing that. We just talked about this before we were recording, that it's really hard because you have all these ideas of what you want to do, but when you're kind of in the middle of your business and things are really busy, it's hard to kind of get caught up on some of that stuff.
No doubt.
But if it's, you know, freezing cold outside and you can't really take care of pools because you winterize them and then you just got to let them go, it's a perfect time to jump into automation or look into what's new in the industry at that time.
Or take your entire team to a trade show.
Yeah.
Super
Brilliant.
cool. It was really cool to see all them so involved in the training. I mean, Greg Garrett told us that was like one of the best training places, and it was definitely
hands
worth
down.
that for sure.
What's up, Pool Chasers? We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We have some exciting news. Our sponsors, Jobber, they've come out with a $19 price plan for all you one pullers out there. They understand, you know, that pool companies don't always have a large team, so they wanted to give you an option of using a professional software to help you stay organized and be the most efficient you can while you're in the field. I definitely know I wish I had this option when I was a one-man show. You know, Greg and I have always felt that it was important to look as professional as possible because we believe that it definitely helps you win jobs. Customers will choose the ones that are most professional in our opinion. So, you know, having the option to make quotes and invoices through the app would have been amazing help with that. You know, not to mention keeping all of our notes in one place instead of, you know, in a notebook or in a piece of paper that we could easily lose. So, you know, we know it's tough out there and we believe Jobber can help you guys stay organized and get the most out of your job. So to try it out, go to getjobber.com/poolchasers. That's getjobber.com/poolchasers.
Let's kind of jump into your service company. So you working for him for a while, started doing your own thing. What do you think was like the best thing about it? And what do you think was kind of some of the difficult stuff about running your own service company?
You know, I would say one of the best things about it was the stability of it. We had the service company during the 2008, 9, 10 debacle. And while we certainly saw some loss in sales, you know, people weren't so quick to upgrade or people weren't going with the fancy pants stuff. People were still keeping their pools up and they were still doing the repairs and the things they needed to do to keep their pools. And in fact, in some cases, people were going on vacation less and staying home in their pools more. So they were even a little bit more willing to invest in and just keep their pool running and looking nice. So I would say one of the real blessings about the service company was the stability during that entire recession. We made it through. We made it through fine. And then the challenging part is, you know, the rates in Southern California are very competitive. And so in order to, you know, grow a business, you know, and constantly fighting against these really competitive rates, it's very difficult to find a qualified and reliable enough tech to pay them enough but still make a margin. And it's a difficult dance that we have in Southern California, and it's why there are so many one-pollers out there, which is it tends to be a little better business model for the service guy in Southern California. It's hard to have a company. So that was probably the biggest challenge. You have a lot of compliance in Southern California or California in general, you know, with all the insurance and workers' comp and stuff that you have to have and all that kind of stuff. So those are some of the big challenges.
Right. So I'm just curious, when you had your service business, I mean, this was the first time that you had ever owned a business in general. Is that correct?
Yep.
So when you ran into problems in your business, how did you fix them? You know, sometimes you reflect on like reoccurring problems and it's like, okay, this is an issue. I write it down, put it on the marker board. We need to have a meeting with me and just my one other guy or your wife, whoever it may be. What was kind of your thought process in fixing problems?
You know, you get a lot of time when you're out in the field cleaning pools or doing repairs or whatever it is you're doing while you're running your business. You get some phone time. My wife and I used to talk a lot on the phone while I was out in the pool, you know, cleaning pools. Buddies of mine that were also cleaning pools. You talk these things through. That is one cool advantage of cleaning pools is you kind of get a lot of audio time and phone time. And so, you know, I wasn't afraid to throw things out there. You know, how do you guys do this? How did you handle that? Have you ever come across this? And you know, I think you kind of work through them. So.
Yeah, and you already had these relationships built up, because I'm finding it more interesting that some people will just flat out like ask for advice and not have any kind of, they don't want to build any kind of relationship like first. It's just more like, hey, blah, 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 blah. Like, can you send me your, you know, service agreement or something? Like, yeah, hey, what's your name again? Like, buy me a drink first before we get into all that. But I feel like that's so important. I mean, it's the sort of honorable thing to do, to build relationships with other like-minded professionals. That way you can bounce off each other, you know, because just because you have a question for them, they're probably going to have a question for you. Maybe it's for marketing or HR or, you know, taxes, whatever it may be. Who's your tax guy? Who's this guy? Who are you? What are you using? Oh, how much does that cost to do that? I can't afford that. Well, you could try this. It's half the price. Like, you build up all these good relationships around good people. You know what I mean? You should be able to, you got to know who's good and who's not. You know, we learned that, you know, early in life was, you know, surround yourself with good people, you know, your friends, colleagues, different things like that. The people you cling on to, you might, you know, turn into that person if you're not careful. You know,
you definitely make better choices when you hang out with good people.
Yeah.
There's such as the benefit of a camaraderie in a local association, a local chapter. I mean, that was huge for me because, yeah, these guys do become your friends and trusted partners in your business, you know, and you and theirs. And you're all better together. So it really is, it can't be overstated, you know, local camaraderie. I mean, there's just countless benefit to it.
Yeah, it's crazy because now we have Instagram and social media. Because I'm hearing that, and I see somebody was like spraying shotcrete, and this is a huge Instagram account. It's like I don't know, but they have like 100,000 followers or something like that, and they're like, "Yep." Yeah, you could tell the owner of this company posted and was like, "I'm just waiting for like all the comments to come in so that I can protect it." Or whatever, but man, they got lit up so bad. It's like, not a respirator in sight, blah, blah, blah. Of course, one guy's working, everybody else is like sitting around. But it's just kind of crazy the things that can go out and so much, you know, you can get so much backlash on it. But, you know, safety is a huge thing now, especially like on social. I mean, you shouldn't be safe just for social purposes. It's something that you really got to take care of yourself. All this stuff that you're breathing in. Yep. And
you definitely have to be cautious about it, though. It's a whole nother world, even for the kids and stuff. You got to be pretty careful with what you post.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
You should think about it before you post it.
But it's crazy that it's just on a whole nother level now to where you're having to be professional for your team and the customers, and you obviously need to showcase what you do on social and your website. And if you're not doing that correctly, you're going to have a lot of critics. There's no doubt about it, especially if you're a progressive company. People are just waiting for you to slip.
There's always going to be critics. And it's the anonymity of the internet that makes it so easy for people to just jump in there and just punch people right in the side, you know? And it's just, that's what they do. So
it's really unfortunate because it does hurt. You wish people could just pick up the phone or maybe even send you a private message that said, hey, this is what's going on. I'm just looking out, you know, because we're in the same industry together. Yeah, that's in a perfect world. We don't live in that world, but just be nice if, you know, because I think it gives them some kind of, you know, they feel good about it or something.
For sure.
I think it's a cool point you made about them wanting to spend more time in their backyards during the recession. I never really thought about that because, if you're not spending money on vacations, then you probably would have a little bit more money to spend on your own,
Yeah, and I mean, I think anytime we do have any kind of a recession or correction in the market, decline in growth, whatever it is, that is a huge advantage that we as an industry have is, hey, stay home, enjoy your swimming pool, look at what you've built, or, to folks that are thinking about building a pool. I mean, it is difficult in a downtime, but people still do build pools. I mean, we have a lot to offer. We do have a lot to offer. I have so many good memories of being in the pool as a kid. You guys do too. I've heard you talk about it. Mm-hmm. My kids have no doubt. They're just countless memories of swimming pools. We need to promote that more as an industry. Like,
most definitely,
we are woven into American culture. You know what I mean? Everybody dreams of a house and a pool, and I don't think we've, as an industry, capitalized that on that quite as much as we could or should just continue to strive to do better.
To be honest, I think they did a much better job of promoting pools back in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Because I look at like a lot of like vintage pool stuff on eBay and Etsy and different things like that, because I'm just kind of just where their head was at in advertising and things like that. And it's just so cool that you see, they're having like a hot dog and a drink and they're barbecuing and the kid is like throwing his hands up and water. Everybody's just happy. And it's just the way that, the sun is kind of like hitting the pool, and it's just like life is good.
It's lifestyle.
But when I saw it, I knew that feeling. I'm like, that was me at some point in time. And that was a lot of other people. But now it's like, it doesn't feel that way. It's like you're being almost sold a car or something. It can't be so like professional. You know what I mean? Like there's got to be some life behind it.
Yeah. We don't ever want to lose the lifestyle side of what we do, because that's what people dream about. It's not the gunite walls or the plaster or whatever. It's not any of that. It's the fact that you have a body of water that you have people swimming in and laughing and playing and jumping and running and doing all the things that we all did, and it's just part of who we are as a culture. It's great. We can't ever forget that.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
And you can, when they're not playing in it, if you thought about the pool that you want, it's just such a beautiful piece in your backyard. You know what I mean? It's just, look at so many of these different documentaries and things like that where they have like these architectural, buildings and, the pool is there and it's just like, wow, like that is just such a cool piece. Like to be able to have that there for the purpose of looking at it and then being able to enjoy it, like what could be sweeter?
And just the contrast of water to hard materials, it will never, ever, ever go out of style.
It's just timeless for sure.
It is. So, yeah.
Because you're totally right, man. It's just, I don't know why people don't promote that, even on like social and stuff, like just how amazing that is. There should be interviews with kids. Like they're the spokesman for everything. I mean, they dictate everything that I do.
Anyway.
Man, my kids are fishes, man. Like they'd much rather do that than anything.
New Year's Eve, our daughter was with her friends, a bunch of 5-year-olds. They were all swimming. It was 43 degrees. The water was freezing. I don't know how cold the water was. The spa was warmed up, but I mean, they're just having a blast. They'll never forget that. I doubt they'll ever forget that.
So we first found you through a podcast back in, I think, 2014 that we had found, and we were just glued to it because we had never heard anything like it before, and there wasn't any, I remember, searching in Apple Podcasts for, pool service, and I was like, there's no way. I'm just, because I listen to podcasts, but there's no way anything is going to come up. And then sure enough, you pop up, and it's like a legit podcast, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, my mind is, because I need so much help. I mean, Ty, like at this point, like knew a million times more than I did. I mean, it was just insane, but clicked on it, subscribed to it, and you had some episodes on there, and it was the most amazing thing. And I know, we had a conversation through email after we were listening to it for a bit, but can you just tell us your thought process behind even starting it?
Yeah. So I started that, I think it was 2013, I believe, 14, something like that.
It had to have been 14.
Called Pool Business Academy. And I was just right there with you, man, listening to podcasts. And I had a lot of time to consume audio content and had the same question. Is there one for pools? And found that there wasn't, found that there were a number of podcasts on how to start a podcast. And so I started to just think about it and why not? And over time decided to go ahead and do that. Made a small investment in some equipment and just threw it out there. I loved it. I mean, it was fun. I didn't end up sticking with it super long. We had 11 episodes. Got a lot of positive feedback on it and really enjoyed doing it. Wish maybe I would have stuck with it longer, better, whatever, but it's neither here nor there. I'm excited that I did it. I don't have any regrets about it. It was a lot of fun. And I would have never had the privilege to be sitting here with you fine gentlemen had I not done that. So,
right.
It was really cool. Yeah.
How long did it take you to figure out how to record and edit and put that up there?
I couldn't believe. I was like, is this really, like, am I the only guy on iTunes that's taking 6 hours to put something up?
Isn't that crazy?
An 11-minget introduction episode, really? I couldn't believe it. But it took me a while. You start to get used to it. You start to get faster and better at it. But yeah, I was actually quite surprised. And then I'm just not a super computer savvy guy. I'm a little bit more of like a wrench kind of guy than I am a computer kind of guy. So, that was just like click and rewind on YouTube like 100 times. Like, what did he say? How to do? Wait, put this where? Check which box. It was tough, but got it up somehow by some miracle, and you found it. So
Yeah, man, that was a pretty big thing when we got into it. We were doing it, and we're like, oh my gosh, this takes way too long. We're like even recording the first episode took us like 3 full days of like just sitting there trying to figure out what we were going to say and what we were going to talk about and writing.
What have we done?
I get it. I totally get it.
It was super tough.
Yep.
And then you get to the point where you're editing it and you're like, oh, I don't even know how to
can't fix that.
Yeah. And the first one took, I don't even know how many hours.
I hear you.
72, 80 hours or something total for us to get. But it's fun, man. It was a cool learning process. And
for sure. And you do get faster at it, right? I mean, I'm sure you've noticed that, right? Mm-hmm. It's gotten better and faster.
And planning better for it helps quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I remember our first kind of run-in Long Beach, we were talking about the podcast, and we were, just very thankful for you doing that, because I think that had a lot to do with kind of, the success we had with our pool business. It helped me learn a lot of things that didn't know in the pool industry. And we were just talking about how maybe it was just a little bit too soon. Still thankful, but if you would have started a podcast now, it would have been obviously a lot more successful. And you know a lot more now. But you were talking about relationships and the people that you were able to connect with because of the podcast, and you started getting different speaking engagements at Long Beach at the Western Show, and we went and saw those as well. We were kind of like fanboys for it. We're like, that's Brett. Yeah. Hey,
total fanboys.
Yeah. Sign my Frisbee. Sign my little algae doll. Yeah.
But I kind of heard like on a podcast the other day, like it's cool when you meet somebody and they're actually the person that you hear, because I feel like we're the same way. When you meet us, it's pretty much how we talk,
right,
and how we do. But there's a lot of, it's pretty cool when you have an expectation and it meets that. Yeah. If it doesn't meet that, and I think that's the cool part about being real. And if it doesn't meet the expectation, people are gonna be disappointed. They're not gonna listen to you. That's why you can't fake it. It's cool to meet somebody and you're like, oh man, he is actually that person. He does talk like that. It's cool.
And that's what's great about the media. I mean, it's pretty raw. You know what I mean? Media, it's probably pretty hard to fake, a personality or who and how you are for very long on a podcast. You know what I mean?
Plus, you have to remember like how you're faking it and got to be that person again. Like that's too difficult. But I remember when you told me though, because you were at Harley when you first heard that still, and I was out cleaning pools by myself. So I remember actually the backyard that I was in when I was listening to that, because you had told me like, hey, I didn't know what a podcast was. So you listened to them back then. I didn't. So, you're like, hey, this is on your phone, which it was. And I was like, oh, cool. And it was cool. It was mind opening.
I remember so many things in my life by which backyard I was in when I heard that or got that call or something. It's so funny you said that. I'm the same way. I'm like, I remember which backyard I was in man, when I got that call.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, did a lot come from having that podcast? I mean, were people reaching out to you other than just, little old Greg and, Phoenix?
You guys were my only 2 fans.
Well, you should have. You could have responded. You could have responded faster. No, just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a ton of people encouraging me and supporting me, and they saw the benefit and value of it. I think, just like Tyler just said, he didn't know what a podcast was at the time, and I think there was probably a much larger percentage of the population that would have felt that exact same way. I don't know what a podcast is. What are you talking about? Whereas now, clearly more people know and use podcasts, consume podcasts. So that whole market and industry is changing. But yeah, I got a ton of encouragement and feedback, and it was awesome. I think that speaks to how hungry the industry is to talk about, that, hey, we want a conversation on iTunes about pools, put it on there, it's free. There's all kinds of, almost anything in the world you can find on there. Why not us? Yeah. So that's what's cool about. There was one other podcast that popped up for a while. I don't remember what it was called, but it was shortly after me. There was another one that popped up for a while.
15-minute pools?
I think so. Something like that. Yeah. So there's been a few of them. I'm just glad, somebody's doing it. So thank you. Hats off to you guys. It is a lot of work to do what you do.
Well, thank you very much. And
how did you feel and take that leap? Because you put yourself out there. That's kind of difficult to do, about talking about something, because like you talked about earlier, the criticism that's out there. Like, how did you think about that when you were doing that, or how did you feel? Like, did you think you were going to get much?
Terrified. Yeah. Absolutely terrified. Like, who am I? You have the, who am I to talk about this or that? And it's just like, you know what? I'm not an expert necessarily, but I might know a little bit more than someone in the audience that I can share, and it's just a little bit helpful to them in their business, and that's what I was willing to do. But absolutely, I was terrified. There's countless people in the room that are smarter than me and could speak in more depth about any one of the things that I ever brought up. I think you just got to kind of raise your hand and say, hey, I'm willing to share some thoughts. Yeah. And when I contacted the Western Show and told them what I was thinking about speaking on, they were very excited and encouraged. Like, that sounds like great stuff. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
Well, that's kind of how we designed the platform, around learning from other people's knowledge, because we definitely don't know everything, and we know less than most people that come in here is on their specialties. So
right
on their specialties. So it's kind of it's a cool platform to learn, and that's kind of what we really saw in it, where we could gain knowledge ourselves for our business by interviewing people that are more knowledgeable than us. So,
what percentage of your audience do you think is cleaning a pool right now? Right this second?
50 plus.
A lot of them, right?
Yeah.
So it's fun to lock in and engage with something, while you're cruising out there cleaning pools. It's cool.
Yeah, shout out to all you guys cleaning pools right now.
Yeah, most definitely. It was crazy in Atlantic City. There was so many people coming up and saying that they were going to have their team listen to episodes and all this other stuff. And that was pretty eye-opening, because didn't really think of it like that. Thought it was more of like an owner or kind of an introduction to somebody that wanted to start maybe a business and just kind of what this is exactly. But
the one guy, he asked us, like, can I do these for my Monday morning trainings or something? And I was like, sure. Like,
that's cool.
It's kind of long, but he's like, well, how long is it?
Training?
He's like, oh no, that's good. And I'm like, 2-hour training. That's cool.
He's
man.
Like, bro, it's 4 degrees outside.
Yeah, we don't.
We have 8 hours to fill.
Right.
Nice. So, episode 1 and 2 of your podcast were 5 things you wish you knew when starting and building your pool business. Can you share with us kind of what was behind that?
I sure can. So I had to go back into the archive and remind myself what those 5 things were. And funny enough, these are common business trappings. These are things that we all struggle with. And so at the time, these were just kind of those first 5 ideas I threw out there. But The first one is importance of a good basic bookkeeping system. Keeping good record of your business is critical. And when I started the business, I started as just a one puller with 4 pools that I cleaned for myself, and the whatever 50 or 60 pools I was cleaning for Scott. I didn't need a record keeping system. As the business grew, the fact that I didn't have one in place amplified the problems that I was having, and it makes it difficult to know what's going on. So good basic bookkeeping is, that's going to be true of any small business, but no exception in pools. The second one was a tight geographical route, and that was just, I found the value in trying to get to the point to where each day was as tight as was possible, and I spent the least amount of windshield time possible, because that just costs money. And I didn't really have that emphasis when I started. It was more pick up whatever you can get, which is probably how most people start, right? You're just picking up whatever, which is fine. If you're starting, of course, you pick up whatever you can get. But having kind of a mentality and a mindset of, I'm going to tighten this up, throughout the day and throughout the week, I think is huge.
Of course you want to take whatever you can get, but I think we could take a little bit better of a, look at if a pool is 35 minutes away from your closest pool and you're only getting $100 for it. It's probably not
difficult to justify
choice,
that,
right?
Yeah.
And I think I did the same thing. I had pools that were 45 minutes apart from West Valley to East Valley or something, and if I would have do it again, I would probably not have taken that pool.
But even though
I needed pools,
the way that you justify it is you go, well, I can get one in between there, and then I can work my way out, and then your focus becomes on building a business that takes you away from a central location, as opposed to trying to build a business. So if you've got that winger, it's better to chop that thing off and get rid of it than, well, I could pick up some pools on the way, and then that makes that big loop worth it.
Right.
In my opinion.
That's
definitely
how I thought, for sure. Like, I can get some, but then you're farther and farther away from your house, farther and farther away from your kids, and if something happens, or your team, if something happens,
makes repairs more difficult. It makes that Friday afternoon phone call of like, hey, what's going on? My heater won't fire. It's something you can fix really fast and easy, but you're just not available. They're too far away.
It's never the close pool that calls on Friday.
It never is.
That's why it's so important to have goals, because if you have goals, it's like, what does my ideal pool company look like?
Yep.
If your ideal pool company is a radius of 5-10 miles, then it's like, I know that I have to go outside of that, but my goal is in the next year or two to be at a point to where the phone is blowing up and the website's blowing up in this little area. So I can sell maybe off this route to my friends at the pool company in the next city over. So, actually writing down, your ideal pool company. If you could have any pool company, even if you see somebody on the internet, social media, maybe it's somebody nearby, like, what is it about their company that you would like so much?
No doubt.
And if it's in your neighbor, it's because they got all the pools in these neighborhoods. Like, dude, they had to work hard for it. That stuff doesn't happen, overnight. And if you buy a big route, it costs a lot of money, and somebody has a lot of money to do that, they probably earned it from doing another right move.
Right.
So it's about having goals and writing those down, and, you'll get there eventually.
I've learned some crazy stuff about, talking to other people from Texas or Florida or other places. Like, when our routes, we have one route that was 16 pools within a 1 mile radius, right? Like small routes. But like Texas, they're driving sometimes 25, 30 minutes between pools, and they can't change that. It's not like they have houses that are that close like we do here. And in California, you got a pool every 2-3 houses. So it kind of definitely makes a difference when you're in different places. But yeah, you don't want to be driving an hour between if you can try to avoid that.
I'm hoping, I'm sure that those areas that it is more spread out, they compensate for that and how much they're charging. They recognize that, hey, they're not doing 3-4 pools on a block, but they're having to drive. So yeah, as tight as you can in your service area within reason, Like, I lived in an area like you guys where, you're driving past 350 pools to get from one to the other, and they could only be a few miles apart.
Right.
But look how many pools you just drove past. So yeah, just whatever you can is, in your market.
Yeah. And that's probably got to be difficult in Southern California. We were talking that, even just being close to the 91, it might look like that house is nearby, but if you have to get on that freeway, like sitting in traffic is no
You got to
different.
know your traffic patterns.
Time
you
is-
really got to know your area and know your traffic patterns, know which direction I should be taking this route based on, what rush hour is doing for sure.
I bet the Waze app is like the most important app to you guys.
I didn't
out
have
there.
that when I had a route.
No.
Man,
Yeah.
that traffic out there is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it does get bad. It makes a big difference on your day. There's so many things that are only 25 minutes away if you're driving at normal times, but it's just like you hit at the wrong time and that's a 2-hour drive or an hour and a half drive.
Yeah, it's insane.
So you've got to really know your traffic patterns and plan that.
There definitely needs to be like a subway or underground tunnel that goes just to Disneyland, Angel Stadium, and Huntington Beach. I think I feel like the freeways would
That
be...
would cut it all out.
You just solved it right there.
It's like everybody. I'm like,
It's
everybody...
Disneyland's fault.
Well, you get the Huntington Beach
Oh,
because
yeah,
I remember when Huntington was like pretty mellow.
Yep.
And within the last 5 or 10 years, it's like
Oh, yeah.
out of control.
Yeah.
There's just so many people out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's the third one?
So the third and the fourth are kind of tied in together, but it's an importance of cash flow and cash reserves. So that just means, one of the things that I was so bad at, I admitted this on my podcast, I was terrible at asking for money. For whatever reason, I just don't have that ask for money bone in my body. It goes against everything that I am to ask someone for a check, even when I'm owed it. It's very strange. It's a problem on my side for sure. Hopefully people don't have it to the extreme level that I had it. I've kind of grown through some of that in the last few years and gotten better about that. But if that is something that's uncomfortable, it's almost like you just have to force yourself to do it. You gotta require that your customers pay you on time. And so that was one of the things that, again, this is 5 things I wish I knew, 5 things I wish I did different or better. And that was a huge one. I was really weak in that. And then just cash reserves, kind of same idea, but just having some cash reserves for your business. The business needs are ever changing. You don't know what they are. And not spending all your money, having some backup is helpful. So those were those 2 on cash. And then the last one was dealing with headache customers. I used to kind of think that you just have to take on everyone that wants to be on your route and in your customer, and you have to work with them, and you just don't. And I just finally got to the point with certain customers, I'm like, my quality of life is significantly lower that I have to deal with you as a person. And I just started cutting people off.
Yep.
And boy, I wish I would have done it sooner. There's just some people that you just don't have to work for.
Yeah,
You just don't.
It's nerve-wracking doing it too. I think you have to be a lot more conscious about that kind of stuff now, because I know when we needed to cut people, we have Yelp and Google and these review platforms that we're afraid that they're going to go on there and just kind of wreck our company, because a lot of times they kind of exaggerate on certain situations.
Totally.
And it's them exaggerating is not good enough for us to flag it and Yelp or anybody else to take it down. So we're like, what do we do? And we pretty much came to a conclusion that it doesn't matter. If they do it and it sticks, we're just going to go get more positive ones because we're going to get better customers and it'll be a thing of the past. But you can't live in that fear, because your quality of life is much more important than, because there's some customers that just week in, week out. It's like, dude, you just cannot make them happy for whatever reason. And they're retired. Sometimes they're really frustrated that the owners aren't cleaning the pool anymore. If that was ever a thing that, Tyler was taking care of it, or I was taking care of it, or even, Kyle had this problem many times where they were just so used to, us doing it. And they just, get frustrated, oh, it doesn't do this. It's like, you have to understand that this is a business, and as we grow, things will change a little bit. Mm-hmm. But you also have to be good at getting that information across to them.
It took us a little while to kind of get to the point where we realized that as well. But as soon as we realized that how much that changed the business, we got a little too cut friendly. But I think we spoiled the guys and spoiled Kyle. So Kyle would tell us all the time, "This guy is a little rough. Can we get rid of him?" No.
Well, that was something that we should have done better.
Yeah, we definitely should have.
There was certain things that we probably shouldn't have shared with the team. That should have been more with us. We shouldn't have told them that, because there was a good communication where we told them that we wouldn't take pools on that we wouldn't want to clean ourselves. But we also let them know, hey, tell us when there's a problem at these pools, because, probably spoiled them too much to where they just thought that, this tree is just a little, this tree is just a little bit long, or, it's like, dude, come on. Like, really? Yeah. Like, duck down. What are you, a 100-year-old man, like, going to clean a pool? Like, come on. You got to man up a little bit.
Definitely have to find the balance on that for sure.
For the trash cans in my way. It's like.
But it becomes something different when you have people working for you than when you're working for yourself, right? Because, I mean, to what we think is not a big issue, they may or, may not. But, we have to, when you're the owner, you have to get that money still. And it's kind of like, hey, we can't just cut him because he doesn't want to chop his tree down, man. Or like, it's like, there's a balance for sure between that, but
and I certainly don't mean cutting out any customer that's ever a headache. Of course, you'd never have a business that way. I tended to err on the side of taking too much abuse too long,
right?
And so that was what the realization that I didn't have to do that I had so many customers that appreciated what I did and were good to work with. I didn't have to take those just one or two here's or there's that were just a nightmare for me. My phone would ring with their number on it, and you just, that feeling, that gut, just gross feeling.
Yep.
And so you're right. You absolutely, if there's ever conflict or a problem, it was always, how do we make this work? And what can we do to make you happy and please you and all that. But some people are just downright abusive, and those are the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just get rid of them.
But you have to find out what the problem is, because if you're not like offering a service that they were looking for, maybe they want that tile scrubbed real good every time you're there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know what? I just, that's not the way I train my team, and that's not going to happen. But, we do work really closely with, a company. It's just kind of a 1-2 man show. And that is something that they do a really good job of. So, back to relationships and knowing people around you, because man, that could be huge. Like, hey, I got a real good lead for you. This is a pool that we have, and he wants us to do the tiles, and we're just not going to be able to do that. I mean, we've done that many times for stuff where we're like, you know what, that's not really in our wheelhouse, but we definitely work with some really good companies here in the city that would be able to take care of you. So
and that usually comes back to you, in a good way. Yeah. You throw good accounts other people's way, those good things come back to you usually.
Yeah.
I think it was good for us to have, we talked about this a couple times before in the podcast, but to have each other to bounce that off of. Mm-hmm. And if you're one polar, like, you guys have your relationship, you can bounce it off your wife. And it's never good to hold it in yourself and just respond yourself, right? That was really good for us to be able to be like, hey, I had this issue with this customer. Like, what do you think? And then you get a different perspective on that customer maybe. And it's like, all right, well, I guess I can put up with him. Or like, oh no, I've had 2 other encounters with him. Like, let's find a way to get rid of it. But there's also a strategic play. Like you said, you can't just get rid of that person, right? It's like, you have to make sure, you have to find a way where it's like, there's a hole, like find that hole and like, oh yeah, that's it. You just said the magic words. Now we can get rid of you, right? Like, or you didn't pay your bill on time. Like, oh sweet, like you're gone. You got to like strategically. Yep. You can't just say, Mrs. Smith, like we're not cleaning your pool anymore.
Right.
Yeah. You're the only person that knows. Everybody's business is different. So
yeah.
You know when the time is right.
Yeah, those are really cool, man. I really enjoyed both those podcasts. First hearing those, especially running a business. So thanks for sharing those.
Hey, pool chasers! We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. We'll jump right back into it in a minute. We are very proud to announce that Jandy has come on as a supporter of the podcast. It's a true honor for us that they have chosen to believe in us and the Pool Chasers community. Their support will help us in our efforts to bring you better content and our mission to help make this the best industry it can possibly be.
Yes, their dedication to the businesses that make up our industry align very well with our vision here at Pool Chasers, and we are super excited to have their support. With their recent quitting the internet policy, which went into effect January 1st, they're taking a firm stance to support our industry. They have pulled over 400 SKUs offline, and as of January 1, no manufacturer's warranty will be provided if the product is purchased online. They've even put a team in place which monitors the web 24/7 to help ensure that the details of the policy are being followed. We think this policy is a great step forward for our industry and are so glad that a company is taking a stand for service guys and gals out there.
So if you haven't heard episode 31 yet, please go listen to it to find out more information, or go to jandy.com/buildstrong. That's jandy.com/buildstrong.
So kind of jump forward in your career a little bit. You went from running your business to the Pool Business Academy. From that, you started working for Alan Smith. Can you kind of take over from there?
Yeah. So Alan Smith is a swimming pool plaster company in Orange County, California. They're probably one of the biggest and definitely one of the best in the nation. Alan is an industry pioneer. He's an industry leader, and very fortunate to call him a mentor as well. No relation to Scott Smith, by the way. Just kind of happened to be two important guys in my career with the Smith last name. But anyhow, so yeah, I started working for Alan as a residential estimator, selling pool and backyard remodels. And it was really fun. I learned a ton about pools from the construction perspective. I had the service perspective pretty well down, the chemistry, equipment I understood and repaired and installed. But I didn't know too much about construction of pools. And so I learned a lot my time there. And so did a number of different roles, and then got into reverse osmosis, purified pool water, which I know is something that's still going on. The big thing there in 2015 is when we in California were just in the height of the drought hysteria. Every single night in the summertime, I mean, without exaggeration, every single night on the news, there was some water scandal. Whether it was some city official left their sprinklers on and it ran down the sidewalk. Believe it or not, water shaming became a thing where if somebody was washing their car in their driveway or hosing down something, people would take pictures and post it on Facebook and look at this person. It's actually a thing, water shaming. Well, what started to happen in California is that they started to look at and to target any and all use of water that they deemed to be optional in any way and really go after its use. Well, the pool industry, because of the appearance of the water in the pool, it looks like we actually use more water than we do. And so it made a lot of people start to target swimming pools. And they started in California, actually, in 2015, they started no longer allowing us to drain pools, whether for remodel or a service. And it sort of became a problem. They're essentially, these cities are starting to shut down our companies in their cities. Well, they're not shutting down the car wash or the nursery or any other water-dependent businesses. Why are they saying that we can't do business? And so that's where Alan, I think, being the innovator and the industry leader that he is, he needed a couple things. First of all, he needed to protect his remodel company because he is a pretty sizable company. He's got 100 employees. It's a lot of families that depend on them doing work. And he saw this threat and started to think, well, how do we respond as an industry, and how can I as a company respond with solutions that will make these water officials happy? So that's when we got into reverse osmosis and trying to find ways that we can use the water even better. Now, you guys know, and I know, that the swimming pool industry actually uses its water very efficiently. The pool industry has the second highest economic output per gallon. So when it comes to industries that use water, if you measure how much water they use versus how much economic output and activity that stimulates, we actually are the second best. Only second to, it's like high tech, where they use very, very little water and they have a very high economic output. But as far as agriculture or car wash type businesses, we use a lot less water per economic activity. And so as this threat became very real, and cities like Yorba Linda, where I live, started saying, you can't do this anymore, that's where we really found the need to find other solutions and to look at alternatives.
Yeah, it was affecting you guys so much so that you were starting to go into courts, right, and fight these chapters and figure out, try to explain our industry a little bit better to these officials, right?
Yes. And that's a good place to plug the CPSA, the California Pool and Spa Association, who did a fantastic job of meeting this resistance with information. So if, let's say, for example, a city council would pass an ordinance that disallowed the draining of pools, they would send letters to the city council describing what the impact of their decision is having on our members. They would oftentimes try to send people from the industry, people like Alan, myself, other pool builders, other remodel contractors, service companies would go to these city council meetings and say, hey, we just want to let you know you're actually harming our business, and this is how. A lot of those guys, they go, oh, we didn't think of that. We didn't really think, we're just trying to save water. They're trying to do the right thing. At that time, all of those water districts were under threat of severe penalty, $25,000 per day by the governor. So it was a substantial threat that they all felt if they didn't reduce the amount of water they were using. So they looked anywhere and everywhere. Well, the CPSA did an excellent job of fighting that. And a lot of the cities that put those restrictions, they did back off or they did reverse. I think it was Laguna Beach or Laguna Niguel, one of them, for a while said no more building of new pools. And a whole bunch of people rallied and a whole bunch of people went to their city council meeting and said, hey, what are you doing here? You can't just say that. I don't think they think about the implications of, what they're doing, what they're shutting us down. You would lose a whole trade if you just shut down all pools across the state. So that information is power. And yeah, we did have to, Alan was on the forefront of that. And I got to kind of be a part of that. It was an important fight. And I mean, it's important for other guys in other parts of the country to recognize what's going on, even if that doesn't impact you. We all kind of know that what happens in crazy California doesn't just stay there. Things tend to move from California. These ideas, look at your energy efficiency bills and variable speed mandates and all these different ideas, they move out of our state into other states. Other states are influenced by what we do. So if we're being targeted, very severely, it's good for, all of us to kind of be aware of that and to kind of contribute to the cause of getting good information out there. You and I talked about that study that was done by the Rancho Santa Margarita Water District, where they demonstrate that a swimming pool uses less water than what it replaces in grass. And so,
is that in taking into account evaporation?
Correct.
And autofill?
Correct.
Running?
So it's what it does is it takes in account your initial fill and then your evaporation rate in that area. And then it takes into account how much water is needed to maintain lawn in the same space of a pool. Does that make sense? So
yeah, and that's a lot more continuous when your sprinklers are running for 45 minutes to an hour every single day. That's a lot of water.
So the way the charts look is when you build a brand new pool and you fill it up, obviously it uses more than lawn. But at about year 1.5, the lawn actually passes the pool, and then the pool stays well under the lawn, and the grass continues to need the water, and the evaporation rate is typically lower than what the amount of water that you need in grass. Because the study was done, just to kind of be clear, it was 1,000 square feet of grass versus 1,000 square feet of pool area, which is typically about a 400 surface area of pool and 600 square feet of deck, right? That's a common, what you would take out that much lawn to do that. So it's not 1,000 square feet of pool because nobody would build that in their backyard, if that makes sense.
Right. So this might be a dumb question, but what is it about the Pacific Ocean and being so close to all that water that something just can't be done to utilize that?
So
especially for because I know it's not that easy to transport water. It's extremely heavy and it's not that easy to do, but there's not some way to pretty much reverse osmosis in the ocean and it plumbs into the cities.
They are, and they're doing it. Now the problem is...
I was going to do it.
It was your idea, man.
Dang
You're
it.
on your way. The problem is the amount of energy you have to consume for reverse osmosis to happen. Reverse osmosis is based on using a lot of pressure to push water through the vessels and through the membranes that separates the salt and the water. Well, there's a couple problems. First of all, ocean water, as you know, the TDS is extremely high. It's in the 30,000 range, 32,000 or whatever it is. It's very, very high. Well, that's a lot of material, right, to remove from water. So, I mean, think about that. The other factor is...
But we have a lot of time, though. I mean, if it could be done and nothing else is being done, we have the majority of our world is made up of water.
Sure, in the ocean.
And in the ocean where there's like endless space, you could have something the size of, Texas or California sitting out there just, even if it took 10 years to purify it to a point, it could be an insane amount.
Right, but you wouldn't accept if I said, hey, I've got a way to make fresh, clean water out of the ocean. It's going to cost you $1,000 per gallon, right? Of course, I mean, that's an extreme. Of course not. So how much energy it takes to produce the water is a factor. The other problem that you have with ocean desalination is the brackish water. So when you remove all that salt out of water, well, it has to go somewhere. It goes into the waste discharge. So now what you're doing is you are essentially injecting 60,000 instead of 30,000. You're injecting 60,000 salt content because you removed it out of half of the water into the ocean. The discharge is going back into the ocean. So you have this extremely salty, brackish water that it can be harmful it is harmful to fish. It's outside of their normal. So it does create, even though it's just extra salty water, it does create a problem at the discharge as well. It's just an energy thing. It takes a ton of energy to do it. So there are other ways to, find and secure and to transport water. So it's not that they don't. I mean, they are doing it, and I think
I was going to say, what are they doing?
It's in what's it called? Carlsbad.
Oh yeah.
So they're doing it now. They're doing it in Carlsbad. And somewhat successfully. I'm sure some people would argue we need more of that. Some people might argue no, it's detrimental to the environment. It uses too much energy. So in anything, right, you're going to have people that argue both sides, and whatever they'll decide. Just nuclear power, right? Should we do more? Should we do less? I mean, people will argue both sides. So it's just that kind of thing.
Well, thank you so much for all your efforts. We heard a lot going on in Arizona. Obviously, we're a similar climate. So, we started to hear a little bit of those threats, not as much as you guys did, but, I know it was a big thing in California, and you guys squashed a lot of those questions. So thank you for that. So you started with Alan, and you started getting into reverse osmosis. How did you transition to what you're doing now? And can you explain some of that, what you do exactly now?
Yeah, so I worked with Alan for a couple different capacities. I mean, sales, reverse osmosis. I also did some of the quality assurance issues with trying to get to the cause of plaster problems and what's causing different discolorations or things like that. And I started to see, sort of a commonality behind, pool plaster, water chemistry. The chemicals we take to sanitize are not necessarily good for the plaster itself. And so we can deteriorate our cement finishes, very familiar with that.
You actually trained a little bit with Greg Garrett, right?
I did. Man. Yeah. Greg Garrett is the man. Also another mentor, and just somebody you want to emulate, right? The guy is he's a study bug as well. Mm-hmm. And in fact, he probably has most of the books memorized. Yes. At least which page number and section he wants you to go to right. to prove his point. Yeah. And so he's very good at that, and I've learned a ton from him as well. So I came across this product on Instagram of all places called aquaBRIGHT. And at first I thought, what the heck is this stuff, right? If you've never seen it, it's applied with a big torch, a big flamethrower. So obviously that catches your eye, right? When you're scrolling through the page, you see a guy in a pool with a flamethrower, and you want to know what's going on. To make a very long story short, what I found was basically a new way of surfacing the interior of pools, right? So we have a couple things that we need to consider. Why do we surface pools in the first place? Well, because we have this rough, raw gunite shell that's the structure and the support of our swimming pool. But we want a nice, clean, smooth, and pleasant feeling surface that we can swim in and sit on and walk in, right? So that's the one function. We need the structure of something that is smooth and clean and makes you want to be in the swimming pool. And then we want the architectural beauty. We want a design. We want a color. We want a look, Gone are the days of white plaster only, right? Obviously. And it's even white and gray only was the next option. That was many, many years. Well, those days are over. Now it's white, gray, and anything else you could ever imagine, right? From exposed aggregate finishes with different combinations of glass, different colors of pigment. So we obviously, when we look at pools, we want something rich and beautiful in the surface. The problem that most of our traditional surfaces have, they're all cement based. So whether it's plaster, quartz, pebble, polished surfaces, they're all based on cement and an aggregate, whether it's a sand aggregate or a pebble aggregate, some kind of an application that requires a mix and a troweled motion to apply. Cement is made up primarily of calcium compounds, right? Water, as we all know, has the ability to dissolve calcium compounds. So it kind of makes you wonder, well, why do we line pools with cement in the first place? If cement has done so much to advance mankind, right? We use it for roads, we use it for bridges. Look at what we can build out of cement and steel. It's done so much to advance mankind, yet its weakness is it can be dissolved by water. Why do we put it in our swimming pools? And so when I found aquaBRIGHT, I found a completely different material in a completely different material category. We're no longer talking a cement. We're now talking a thermoplastic liner. So something that is chemically inert and it can be made smooth to the touch, and it can also be made pretty. So it's essentially like, if you think of what is your bottle of acid, what's your acid in? It's in a plastic bottle. Well, why can't we line a pool with a pretty looking plastic? And that's what essentially aquaBRIGHT is. It's a thermoplastic surface that looks very, very beautiful. It actually looks like a micro pebble or like a perfectly exposed quartz. So I was very drawn to this idea, right? When I first started looking into it, it was to disprove it, right? I'm a plaster guy. I love pebble finishes, and I still love pebble finishes. But I'm wanting to disprove this stuff. It looks kind of, what is this stuff? It's suspect.
Sounds too good to be true. Almost
too good to be true, right? What is this? The more research I did, the more I fell in love with it, plain and simple. And so after working successfully with Alan for about 4 years, I decided, you know what, I'm ready to go back out on my own again. Renewed my license, started back up my business, and started applying aquaBRIGHT, and that's what I'm doing today. Fortunately, Alan was able to catch the vision of this product and how great it is, and he's been able to incorporate it into his company, where he actually refer a lot of work to me, and we still work together, just in a different capacity. So that's been real neat too, that we've just kind of changed that relationship, but he still is a dear friend and mentor. So that's cool. But yeah, I love this stuff. I couldn't possibly be more excited about it.
Yeah. So maybe you can share with us, sort of the features and benefits, because, after we found out that that's what Advanced Pool Specialist, does is, applies this ecoFINISH aquaBRIGHT. And I know that there's one for more like vinyl lined pools as well.
Yeah, they have what's called polyfibro. It's just kind of it's the same material. It's just branded a different line.
Right.
So ecoFINISH is the company, and then aquaBRIGHT's a line, and polyfibro. It's all the same. Basically, it's a plastic powder that's thermally sprayed on.
Right. And it was really cool that, there was even one thing that I saw where you could leave a body of water empty longer and you don't have to worry about maybe the pool cracking or anything like that, because they haul in these water trucks and they have to keep the water in the pool. But with this stuff, after you're done applying it, it can sit for a week or
absolutely
so.
Yeah. So plaster, most plaster finishes, whether it's a quartz or pebble finish, most cement finishes are meant to be hydrated, and once they become hydrated, you want to keep them wet. They're designed to be under the water. That's what they're for. So when you dry out plaster, take the moisture out of it, you can weaken its structure, especially if it's already old. If it's old plaster, you certainly wouldn't want one of your old plaster pools sitting out in the Arizona sun, right, dry, because that's going to make it chip and blister and all that. Because aquaBRIGHT is a plastic material that doesn't have any hydration to it, it can be left dry. So it's great for, environments where you have to winterize, and the pool can be left empty. It's great for times when you can't, you need to drain the pool for a portion of the year for whatever reason. It can be left empty, and there's no ill effects from that.
Sure. And have you seen maybe more consistent chemistry in these pools?
Yeah, so those would be the kind of the key benefit, is that plaster does have an impact on our chemistry, and I think more than we realize, right? Especially new plaster really wants to bring our pH up. That's why we have to go through kind of that painstaking chemical startup process when the plaster or pebble finishes new. Well, aquaBRIGHT just doesn't respond. It doesn't react that way. It doesn't have any kind of a chemical reaction once it's applied. It's not like a cement that's still curing or hydrating. It's actually called, but it's already on there, and it cures right then and there. So you don't have those startup process or anything like that. It also it tends to maintain a much more stable pH in your pool. And then the other big thing would be aesthetically. I mean, when you look at a beautiful blue plastered pool, right? Brand new, beautiful. How long does it take before you start to see the swirls, the modeling? You start to see white spots maybe. You see all kinds of different things that happen. And have you ever seen a 5-year-old blue plaster pool that looked like it did the day it was installed? I mean, I certainly never have, and most people haven't.
Yeah, seeing those pictures on there, it was insane how much the pools really pop. Because you're right, and everything we've seen on all these different websites is that even after 6 months or so, some of these brand new pools are already starting to have discoloration, or they're getting etched out already. And that's, some new homeowners don't know how to take care of a pool necessarily. Right. So if we have a monsoon and there's sand in the pool and it settles and it doesn't get vacuumed right away, all those
scales
sort of mineral deposit on all that, all that stuff just sits there. And even after you vacuum it up and stuff, it kind of takes a while and a lot of brushing before, it'll go away. So just kind of curious, because obviously the fire aspect of this whole thing is very entertaining.
Sure.
But we know that this type of material has to be applied with heat.
So we call it a flame spray process. And basically what you're doing is you're kind of like powder coating, but instead of putting it in the oven, you're applying your heat at the time in your material. So you're kind of melting this plastic onto the pool shell. There's several prep stages that we do that I won't get into, but the real meat of the installation is melting plastic and pneumatically or forcefully applying it to the surface that we're putting it on. And we do 3 coats of this material. So we go over it multiple times to make sure that we have a really good uniform coat. And it's just a beautiful product. Yeah. Pools that I've done, months ago, coming up on a year now, they look like we did them last week. They just look the same, and I've never seen that with a plaster product ever.
I think that's the video you sent me, right? Was
the
pool you sent me? Oh, that was cool.
Yeah, and I mean that's for us, because we see so many pools and we're so used to plaster discoloration and what it does. We're so used to that, but keep in mind, most consumers aren't used to that. And maybe they never paid attention to it before, never really realized. But I can guarantee you something. When somebody just finished doing a $50,000 remodel and spending $10,000 on their pool surface, they start to pay attention. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, people expect their pool to look consistent and uniform, and just plaster struggles with that, which is why the industry has pushed toward pebble. Now, I'm pro a pebble push because I think it's a better product than plaster. Like Greg Garrett himself said, you know, white plaster in a pool today is like putting an 8-track in a brand new Lexus. Why would you do that? Well, you wouldn't.
Right.
So pebble are, you know, as a much better surface. It's more durable. It does last longer. It can take, you know, the chemistry environment much better than a traditional smooth troweled plaster can. But, you know, aquaBRIGHT is just that, it's that next level. It's just a new material category that I think it's going to be a big player in the market, you know?
So is this only used for remodels on plaster pools, or is this like...
No, it could be.
So what would the
construction.
process look like on new construction? Would they build kind of a...
You still plaster the pool.
You still plaster the pool,
Correct.
and then you would have to... Okay, so I'm like
Correct.
trying to think of how they would do it.
So you still shoot the gunite the same, you hang the tile the same, and you plaster the pool right up to the tile the same as you would, and then this is applied on top of the plaster. So think of this as, you know, when you talk about, you know, what is plaster for, right? The structural side, you know, and the cosmetic side. Well, plaster is still a great material for that nice, smooth structure. If you've ever watched a good plasterer, they make those beautiful wedding cake steps with those beautiful radiuses. Like they're artists. The problem is that when that material that they just made beautiful interacts with the water, that's when it starts to have issues, when the water becomes aggressive. And that's what we've seen and could spend, you know, months and months talking about. You still use the structure of the plaster on a new pool and then put this surface coating on it. And now you're talking about a finish that's going to last, you know, it's going to outlast plaster 3-to-1 easily.
So is it like an additional cost then?
No doubt. Absolutely. Yeah, this is not the cheap product. This is, think of it more like, you know, if you got a polished finish like a Hydrazo as a brand name, for example, or like an all glass pebble finish, you know, those are the higher end. This is on the higher end spectrum of pool surfaces. This is not just your cheap, you know, entry level option. But, you know, again, most things that last longer, you know, there's a reason, right? There's a reason they last longer. If it was cheaper, I wouldn't, you know, have to be sitting here talking to you guys about it. I would be have a line around the block from here to Arizona.
Right. So read somewhere on their website that back in the 80s, the government, you know, had banned some of the crucial ingredients that were made, you know, in these products prior to that.
There certainly have been materials changes on the plaster side, on the paint side, no doubt. I mean, paint.
But that was something they were giving up. You know what I mean? Is that once it got banned, what they were having to use, it was prone to more etching and cracking and different things like that. Yeah. But it was a safer, you know, I guess, surface anyway.
And our chemicals that, you know, that we're adding into pools have changed. And I know Greg definitely talked about this, from, you know, using 2 hypochlorites, you know, liquid chlorine and calcium hypochlorite, to starting to use more acidic sanitizers and starting to add the cyanuric acid, which elevated cyanuric acid is by far the biggest problem in my opinion on, you know, pool plaster and swimming pool water chemistry. It's just way too common of an issue that we aren't, as an industry, paying attention to our cyanuric acid levels. They get really elevated and cartoonishly elevated, and it becomes a problem for a number of different aspects to your water chemistry.
Right. So, I mean, is this going to be something you talk about in Long Beach or what?
You know, I'm not going to be speaking there this year, but I am actually trying to see if they'll let me do a live demonstration of the product install. We did our local trade show in Anaheim. It's called the Hot Show. And we got to do a live demonstration. It was at nighttime.
Dude, we saw
really
it.
Cool.
You put it on Instagram or something?
We had it on our Instagram.
Yeah.
Dude, that was super cool.
It was really cool. It's hard to understand, you know, and conceptualize what this product is, how its installation works without seeing it. You know, I liked it until I saw it, and then I loved it. You know what I mean? So it's like we really wanted to give guys the opportunity to see this stuff with their own eyes and to touch it right after it was done. I mean, within 30 seconds of finishing, I said, "Here, come on up, guys, touch it. It's a little warm, but it's done."
Right.
You know, and we could pour acid on it right now. It wouldn't react.
But the crazy thing is, I don't know if you don't know because you're too close to the project. But when you show a video of the discoloration, even on a newer kind of just got remodeled pool, and then you show one that just got done with the ecoFINISH, like you can really tell a difference. And I think even homeowners know exactly what you're talking about when it's like, here's what the pool looks like right now. And they're like, yeah, that's what mine looks like. It's like really, I thought I was getting this like really popping blue, sort of look.
Yeah.
And, when you show it afterwards, it's like, damn, like you can really see the difference. And I think people, will be able to relate to that a lot.
No doubt. Another thing that happens, it's kind of funny is people, you get used to what your surface looks like, even though it doesn't look anything like what it used to look like. And so when we break the edge of a step or when we chip out a tile or something along those lines and we show people, hey, do you see how gray this is? And they're just surprised because the gray is it's all gone to where it almost looks white again. And it essentially is. That's what's happened is the pigment's been released and now you're back to the white cement. And they see, when you break it apart and you can actually look at, the side profile, wow, I forgot how gray or how blue, a lot of the blue pebble finishes from, the early 2000s, you chip those things up and you look at them from the side, they're incredibly blue, but on the front, they look like a light gray, dingy. So It is kind of funny to see that you kind of forget, the ecoFINISH, it stays the same. It doesn't change because it doesn't go through that chemical reaction or dissolution. So that's just one of the really cool advantages of it.
Yeah. How long have you been doing it for?
About a year, almost a year.
Almost a year?
Yeah.
How long has that company been around?
They've been around 10 years now.
10 years?
Mm-hmm. And they have over, I think it's 250 applicators worldwide.
Oh, wow.
I believe 100 of which are in the United States and another 150 internationally. So
they've been as long as their warranty.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. 10-year warranty.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. It sounds like love to see that in person one day.
Yeah. So, hopefully, this is not an announcement or anything, but hopefully we get the opportunity to do it at the Western show. If not, I do want to find ways to do more, live demonstrations because you really get a grasp of what it is that we're doing when you see it.
Well, we talk about it a lot all the time, watching things live or doing things live and doing things in person. Because a lot of, the classes are awesome. You can go sit there and listen, but until you put your hands on it, some people will learn in the classroom much better than others, but a lot of people will learn by doing things or seeing things and touching it, like you said. And it makes a really big difference for a lot of people. So it'd be cool if they, like in Atlantic City show had this wall and they did live talks about surfaces and or they were doing a shotcrete live demonstration where you could see.
I love that
that
stuff.
Was super cool.
Absolutely.
Raypack had a heater there.
Yeah, Raypack.
Yeah, Jandy had a light.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the shows that do that, it definitely makes more of an impact. I've seen
Yeah.
all kinds of things demonstrated that you just didn't realize. Oh, that's how they do that, or whatever it is. It takes the boogeyman out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
You kind of can. Okay, I see what's going on here.
And from every aspect of the industry, if you're servicing, building, whatever, if you understand how something works, like you said earlier, it just makes you better at what you do.
All the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So when you have those live demonstrations, is it maybe potential future customers or is it other builders, remodelers, things like that?
So for that one, that was more of a service guys show.
Okay.
So that was showing these guys, hey, this is what we can do, and we would love to take your referrals, your clients. I know that a lot of customers put a lot of faith in their service guys, and they come out and, hey, we're thinking about doing a remodel back here, or hey, we're thinking about redoing our plaster. It's, 15 years old. What are your thoughts? Who do you know? And we want to give guys the option to say, hey, this is a new product that's out there, and it has a lot of advantages. I think you should look into it. That's usually, how we get the lead, and we take it from there and answer folks' questions, and they decide if it's a good fit for them.
What are some things that a service tech or anybody know about taking care of a pool that has this finish on it? Is there any kind of differences? Do you need a special brush or anything?
No, you don't need a stainless steel brush. You don't, you're not going to need. It's not porous. It's not going to allow algae to grab on as well. So just a nylon bristled brush, a regular vacuum, your regular cleaners that you use. And that's about it, really. There's not much to it. You will notice if coming from doing a plaster pool or a lot of plaster pools, you will notice a little difference in the water chemistry and the pH being a little more stable, for sure. You'll notice that.
Nice. That's really good.
Yeah.
So we'll just transfer over to the Western Pool and Spa show. We really enjoy that show. It's like the first big show that we've actually ever been to, and we've been there every year.
Yeah.
For the last.
This will be our 5th year, I think.
Yeah, this will be our 5th year, and we saw you. You actually taught there 4 years in a row, and I'm just kind of curious why you chose to be there so much.
I mean, that's kind of like the show I grew up at, right? Like that's when I started and knew absolutely nothing and needed something. I went there and was like, wow. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember the first time you saw a seminar schedule that you're like bummed out because you can't go to every single class, or there's, 3 in that time slot you would love to take. And that was the Western show for me. I don't know why, but for some reason when I was there, I think I was listening to David Hawes, who is a very successful service guy in California. He's currently the president of IPSA, and just a great man. Another guy that I'm lucky to call friend. And I was listening to him speak, and it was so inspiring and so smart. And he was just talking about, how he did things. And it was such a benefit to me and to the classroom. For some reason, I just remember thinking like, I want to do that someday. I want to help people in the same way. I don't know why I thought that. I actually get nervous when I speak. Like, ask my wife, right? I get like, I'm going to throw up nervous almost every time until I start, and then I get comfortable. But it wasn't easy to do that for sure, but it was valuable. I just think it was something I wanted to try to give back.
Yeah, that's got to be the best feeling ever. I know we feel that way every time that we can help somebody. I think sometimes you get more scared of the people that you're not going to be able to help because they already know so much, and you feel like they're going to kind of bring you down a notch. But that's not what we should focus on, because if they already know everything, then they just know everything.
They should start sharing.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that's what it is.
That's what happens.
And that's what it was so cool to us to hear you talk, because nobody was really talking about some of these topics. And we were like, dude, like this dude gets it. Like, he must have had that background or something, because these are the exact questions that we want to ask, and we don't really know who to go to ask these kinds of things, because it was more tailored for our industry. And like your podcast episodes was like having tighter routes and budgeting and different things like that. It was just really cool to hear somebody talking specifically that day and age and what we were doing. So
that's awesome.
We, like you said earlier, we were pretty big fanboys.
Yeah,
we had to go sit in I think we were in the second
nosebleeds.
row. No way, dude. We got there early, sat in the second row. But you had a pretty big class that time. That was in the big building or the big classroom auditorium. That was pretty impressive to see the audience that showed up for that class. It was cool.
Well, thanks. It can be nerve-wracking a little bit, but it is fun.
Do you remember the guy that asked you the question, and then everybody kind of looked at him, and then he kind of got up and left? Did you remember that?
I don't remember that. No.
Do you remember that?
So
he was sitting across from us, and he asked a question like, "What is this class about?" or something, and you answered, and he stood up and then walked out.
I do remember that.
I didn't sell that guy.
Oh man!
I think he thought it was something else. I think he like a QuickBooks.
No, because he like shook his head like he was super upset, and then like he didn't want to sit in there, and he like left.
Oh.
You probably saw it because you were in
guy.
Because you probably paid attention to it. But I was like, oh man, he did not like that answer. But
that's funny.
It didn't really bother you, obviously, if you don't remember. So that's good.
So next. So one of your classes was on raising rates without losing a single customer. We spoke with many companies that are trying to decide how to do that. Can you share some of those points with us?
Yeah. So in that class, I mean, that's a good kind of a rah-rah for somebody who feels stuck in their route. And like, I know one of the challenges that I had, and I know a lot of guys that I talk to have the same problem, is not raising their rates. Their rates are just too low, right? It becomes easy when you bill a customer the same dollar amount every month to just leave them that way for too many years, and it gets to become a problem. So kind of the idea, the premise of that was you should have a number that's a good target for you, for your company. So if you're a one poler and that maybe you're a 60 pool guy, that's who you want to be. It doesn't matter if it's 80 pools or 60 pools, whatever the number is for you. Once you get to that 60 pools, when you go to bid 61, don't bid it where your route is. Bid it 10 or 15% higher. Bid it 20% higher. If you don't get it, you still have your 60 pools and your route. If you do get it, now you have one more pool than you should have because you have 61 accounts. Now you get the opportunity to go through the bottom of your list, the accounts that are too low or that you don't want. Maybe you're not charging them correctly, and start to raise them up until someone drops. That's a big fear that a lot of people have. What if people quit? Well, you know what? My experience is a few people will, and that's it. A few people will. So use that to your advantage. Go to your bottom of your list. Go to the guys that you're charging way too few dollars on, and start bringing them up until somebody quits. You go back down to 60, and you stay there. You get on the next bid it the same way, 10% higher. Go back to the bottom. And it was just a way of saying, the whole idea of, raise your rates without losing a single customer means figure out what that number is of how many customers you want, what fits you. It could be 350 accounts. It could be 750. It doesn't matter. The principle being that if you're there and that's a good place for you as a company, then when you go to do that next bid, make sure you're going a little bit higher up and then going back through the bottom of your route and specifically raising rates until people drop.
So what does that conversation look like with the customer when you got to go back to the bottom and, raise the rates?
I had some rate raising letters that I just were pretty common. Most of your price increases are going to be, your kind of normal upkeep, say $5 to $10 a month or whatever, let's say. And if you do them often enough, you're never really raising your rates so high, so fast. Now, if I had a customer that, let's say I severely underbid, and I had this one time, I had a customer, I bid him at 100 or whatever the number was at the time, I don't remember, but let's just say 100. And after 3 months of cleaning this pool, this thing was it was not a $100 pool. I thought these leaves would stop. I thought this thing would get better. I've been doing this thing for months now, and it is just a problem every week. I went to that customer and I raised his rate to I think it was 135 straight from 100. So it was a substantial increase. Well, in that particular case, I'm going to either write a letter specifically to address that situation or have a phone call specifically to address that situation and follow it up with something written, an email or letter form. I used more email or more letters than anything. Actually, I would actually write a letter on a Word doc and print it and send it to that customer with my signature on it, saying this is the new rate and all that stuff. That's how I did it. But I didn't really do a ton of email at that time. So email can work. It can be less personal though. So a lot of people don't read all their emails that come through as much as you think they're reading your emails. They don't. So, a letter tended to work well for me.
Would you ever talk about, that, chemical costs go up and you've acquired more overhead and you have now employees? You're putting your guys through an education system that costs money. And because of all of that, this will be, would you think it'd be okay to almost say, we have to bump it up another $30, $40, but it's going to be locked into that rate? And is there that level of honesty where it's, when I first started and gave you that price, I didn't really know? Because sometimes I feel like just being honest with people and customers and saying in a professional way that you didn't know as much when you first started, but this is a business, and
sure,
my family and my team and their families really depend on the income that's coming in. So we need to raise these rates up a little bit, because if you were to leave me because of that and go somewhere else and another company that's not familiar with your pool, they're going to be charging you close to what I'm charging. I mean,
right,
they're still going to be cheaper, but you should want to work with somebody that takes care of, the whole team and
right,
everything.
I would get into some of that detail
if you had to,
like you would just mention, rising chemical costs, rising fuel costs, things like that. But without specifically getting into all the details, I mean, some of it, I would be reading that and be like, well, that's your problem, pal. You got to figure that out. But, I don't think any of us pay any bill that we expect to stay the same, right? I mean, your electric bill doesn't stay the same. Netflix doesn't cost what it used to. Nothing stays the same. And
it's a good way to put it.
And so it was amazing to me that I never expected any bill I ever paid to stay the same, but I would expect myself to keep my rate for my customers the same. And the other thing that was shocking is I had times when I raised rates that people were like, it's about time. Like, I was wondering when you were going to do that. And I'm thinking, why didn't you tell me that? Like, come on, help me out a little bit,
That is funny.
I think I learned pretty early on that it was important to do it in smaller increments more regularly. So I would do $5 or $10 increases every year, every other year. And I just kept a regular, my rates going up. I think that's a good habit to get into because your costs from one side of the year to the other are not the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you have to understand this isn't community service.
Right.
Like, you should run a profitable business and you should be making the most money you possibly can the honest way. Like, if you don't want to make money, then to me, that just sounds like a cop out because you don't want to figure it out. Like, that's all there really is to it.
Yeah. And it's hard to steal from people. I mean, the market keeps you in check, right? You can't just start charging some astronomical dollar for pool service without any accountability from the marketplace. Other people say, well, I'll do it for less than that. And that's kind of our accountability on that end. But I think it's also important as you do try to position yourself as the higher priced service company, you definitely have to position yourself as a higher value service company. I would make sure and express to customers that there are 3 or 4 aspects to your swimming pool that are absolutely critical. Cleaning it, the chemistry, the equipment and equipment maintenance, and safety. Those are the 4 things about your swimming pool that are critical. Most pool professionals just clean the pool, and they don't pay a lot of attention to the equipment running in optimum condition with O-rings, being right, leaf baskets broken. I mean, you can really do damage by not replacing a $6, leaf basket. Well, your customers have to know you're looking out for them when you do put in a new basket. So you have to, if you're going to be the higher price guy in your market, you've got to express value.
For sure. I mean, I think we had I didn't know how many low rate customers we had until we went through this transition of selling the accounts. And I was surprised it was like 32 out of the whatever we sold that were like under 100. And I was like, no way. I'm like, there's no way we have that many out there. And then I'm like, they just keep coming. As I'm going down the list, I'm like, what? I'm like, that person's still paying $85? Like, what the heck? Like, it's crazy, and it's difficult to it's difficult. You get caught up in being in the business and the day to day, and you don't
gets
realize,
away from you.
Like, there's 30. I thought we had like 9, or 9 or 10, and it was definitely way more than that. So it's pretty crazy. It's important to do that, because if I would have gone through that list a year before then and realized that, like, we could have been much more profitable, and at least we could have fixed the trucks better. We could have done other things with that money that we didn't have. If you don't pay attention to it. So,
but it's
a really
nice,
good point.
It's nice to know, though, that as time goes on, the better your company gets, the more appealing you are to better customers and people that are willing to spend more money to work with you and pay, whatever the service cost is monthly. And then you have to understand that you'll then run into the next problem, which is like building up a larger team and things like that. So I think it's important to utilize your time wisely when you don't have a ton of business. Like, kind of gear yourself, make goals, and what are we going to do when we get to this level? Like, we were talking about, at 60 pools and things like that. So
I know we hadn't actually implemented a lot of it, but we had talked when we made the switch whether or not we were going to revamp Brothers or do this. Like, we had talked about going. I think it's important to sit there and reflect on the business every year, right? We hadn't really done that very well, I don't think, and like go and overlook everything, every aspect of it, every year, new year comes around, before the new year, like take a time to look and be like, set new goals and set new aspirations of where you want to be, and then overlook the whole business. Like, look at every part of it, see whether or not it's profitable, see whether or not you can make changes to improve, because there's small little changes here and there that you can step back and take a look at the business every year. And we had definitely talked about doing that, if we were going to move forward.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that helps me anyway is making workflow charts, and we're going to get into more episodes of that. But putting together a really good workflow chart and knowing exactly what your business does and who's responsible for what. Mm-hmm. And, there's just all this accountability, and it's nice to see a very detailed bird's eye view of what your company is and where you're going. And I think for anybody that doesn't know what that is, like, just look it up, workful charts, and just look at templates.
Do you have like a specific software you recommend for that?
Yeah,
or do you just...
I do. It's let me. You guys talk about something else for a second. I'm just kidding.
I'm like getting interested. Like, I need one of those.
And everybody, I think I have a slight learning disability, to be honest. I think I have to like see things because it catches my attention. Because when I'm reading, I just get so sidetracked.
Sure.
I go into other places, and I look at infographics on Pinterest. I love that a lot. I've learned so much from that.
Yeah.
It's just I'm very like visual.
Yep.
Or people talking to me. Like, I learned that way. But like textbooks and stuff like that, that's why I was drawn to podcasts a long time ago.
Sure.
Is because I could like listen to it, and I could hear personality, and I could hear people being sincere. Like, my imagination wasn't very good in books, because, like, people around me would be like, oh, it was a great book. Like, felt like you were there. I was like, man, I don't get that. I don't read Alice in Wonderland and feel like I can smell the cookies, and
the rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, it just wasn't. So it's actually called Lucid Chart. And this is one I've been using for about a year now. And I can show you after we're done with this, like, kind of how it works. But lucidchart.com. That's LUCIDCHART.com. There's a bunch of like different templates on there and stuff that you can like check out. But man, building those workflow charts are pretty sweet, because it's nice when you get stuck. When you get stuck and maybe you don't know what to work on or what to do, mm-hmm. you can blow it up like huge and be like, wow, I have my HR department, my marketing department, these people are within it. Oh, I'm responsible for this. And it's just nice to see what all is going on. It's really cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah. So just kind of curious, you have so much going on. You have your family and all these other things. What keeps you motivated? Is there anything that is there any activities that you do? Is there anything you listen to? Is there anything that just keeps you kind of, jacked?
I think we touched on it. I mean, as far as, family, and that's what you work for. You work to provide for your family. And I do love what I do. So that makes it easier, because it's not every day is a fairy tale, as you guys know, right? It's a grind. And sometimes it's just life is tough and work is tough. So, to get through that, you've got to love what you do. And so, I mean, I think I'm passionate about wanting to leave this industry better than I found it. I think would be something that motivates me. I want to make positive change. So anyhow, I mean, those are kind of some of the things that, and really, as far as, what kind of keeps you inspired. I love new ideas. My audio consumption is down right now just because my role has changed. Sometimes you're listening to all kinds of audiobooks and podcasts. Other times you go through times where it's just hard to get to anything. I'm in one of those times right now. But I do get back around to just books that are motivating, inspiring, good ideas, and you start to get excited. You always want fresh ideas to get you excited about your business. There's always something you could be doing better. So just, I think a hunger for learning and wanting to do better.
Can you share some of those books or anything recently you've been reading?
I would say a book that's had a great impact on me recently is a book called Extreme Ownership, written by 2 Navy SEALs who take the leadership principles that they learned in combat, where you have a life or death situation, every decision you make counts more than it's all amplified. And so they honed their leadership skills to a point to where they became among the greatest leaders in the world. Obviously, somebody leading men into battle, men and women into battle, there's some serious responsibility there. And they've taken those principles and they've translated it into business leadership, where it's still very serious, right? We're still dealing with livelihoods of people. You have your employees and their families, so it's very serious. Not quite life or death usually, but it's very serious and important. And so that book, it's Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and
it's Jocko. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I actually started reading
Leif Babin.
Yeah.
I think I started reading that actually on the way when we went to New Jersey. I think in the beginning he's talking about kind of what they have to, how they prepare people and how you kind of wash out the ones that are just not going to be able to, because being a Navy SEAL, that's a ton of responsibility.
Totally.
You got to be able to, deal with the elements and all the other things that happen.
I mean, those are just like the elite humans on the planet, right? I mean, Navy SEALs, it's hard to get better than that. So, I mean, there's a lot you can learn from those
Have you
guys.
heard Jocko's podcast?
No, I have not. I know that he has one.
Yeah.
Have you listened to it?
I listened to some of them. They're more like stories. So he uses the stories that are in the field to kind of teach lessons. He's a little bit hard to listen to me, in my opinion.
For you,
but it's really cool, motivational.
Well, the book I think is outstanding, so we definitely recommend
Check that out. Any other podcasts or things that you like to listen to?
I mean, that's all I can think of at the moment. I mean, for me personally, I have an Audible membership, so a book a month is throw on different business or marketing books, and I mean, that's what does it for me.
Do you remember what podcast you were listening to before you started your podcast? I know that was a long time ago, but where you might have just been listening to it, be like, dude, like that'd be sweet for the pool industry.
Probably the guy that I listened to the most was Pat Flynn. Ever heard of him?
Of course, for sure.
Yeah,
Smart Passive Income.
I figured you had, Pat Flynn. I mean, that guy's, and got to meet him too. He's a really cool guy. He's one of those guys that you like you said, you meet him and he's just like he is on the podcast, just a friendly dude.
Oh yeah, because you said you went to one of those podcast events, right? Not Podcast Movement, but the one before that.
New Media
Expo. Yep.
Yeah, we went to that, got to meet him there.
That's cool.
Take his class. And in fact, I think it was his first presentation, the first time he ever spoke. Didn't he say that? Yeah, I think so. Wow. So it was pretty cool to be a part of that.
He's an amazing human being. Like how cool he is, and just you look at all the things that he does, he's just, oh my God, the dude just works so smart, so crazy, so hard. You could just see it in everything that he does. I'm like, man, and he gets it. I mean, he gives out gold. For those not listening to that, man, you gotta check out that episode, because there's so much stuff that he's talking about.
Absolutely.
And the benefit in like giving information. I mean, he gets a lot from it, but he's so transparent in what he's doing. And the information that he's giving to people.
And one of the best things you can do is not limit yourself to, that guy is running an online business and that really doesn't have anything to do with me. Actually, no, there's probably a ton of nuggets in there that you can apply to your local service business or remodel company, or you're a pool builder. Mm-hmm. There's so much in there. So I still check in with him. I'm still on his newsletter list. I'll click on him and read through what he's doing. I watch some of his YouTube videos, because it's just you can get a lot from guys like that online.
It's funny how you mentioned that, because I was just telling Greg we were talking about our podcast and like how some episodes have way more listens than other ones, and I was thinking of different ways we could maybe help people get more listens on some of these, because some of them have really good like nuggets, like you said, in them, but people don't want to listen to them, or they skip over them because they're like, oh, that's a product, I don't care about that, or that's a service guy, I'm a builder, or vice versa, that's a builder, I'm a service guy. But understanding how they correlate together is really cool, and there's a lot of good knowledge in a lot of what we're doing and talking about with certain people that you know, if you haven't listened to them, you know, you could go back and listen to them and get those little nuggets out of it. And that's how I approach anything in church or in other, like if I listen to a sermon or I'm listening to a speaker, like that's what I'm trying to do, right? Just pull nuggets out of it. I don't necessarily listen to the whole conversation. Sure. I'll get everything out of the whole thing, but there's little pieces, you know. I used to travel a lot, going and listen to a bunch of different pastors, and a lot of them I didn't really like the way they spoke or whatever, but I just try to have that approach with like, hey, like I got to get something out of this. I'm going to sit here for an hour and a half anyways. I might as well try to pull some type of knowledge that I can apply to my life. And that's cool you brought that up, because I think we were just talking about that, and you can pull different nuggets out of everything you listen to or read.
Yeah, but if you want to be the best you can possibly be, like you have to find inspiration in everything that you do. I'm very thankful that I have that in me, that every restaurant I go to, everything that my kids do, my wife, everything that happens in life, just insanely observant to why people do what they do or why they are attracted to something, or the architecture of a building. Like, wow, how did they do this? What was the thought behind it? I wonder if they could have done this. This would have made this problem better. Like everything that you see, even if it doesn't apply to what you do, just thinking outside of the box and just thinking about stuff like differently. When you get to the drawing board for your business or something that you might be trying to figure out, all those times you were thinking outside of the box and like processing new information, I think it's going to help out a lot, because I make it a habit to listen to things that are crazy off topic from what I think and do.
Right.
A lot of different TED Talks and just stories in general. It's just crazy how much that just opens up your mind, because we only use so much of it.
Right.
So if you kind of tap into that, that special space, it's crazy how it'll benefit you.
I think you're more likely to
future.
remember that too, because you're more likely to remember something that was off topic or different than the normal day-to-day thing.
Yeah. Well, I have a very, very bad memory, but things like that I can remember very well. It's not that I get a hard time from all my family, because like, man, dude, you remember the weirdest stuff, but you cannot remember like what we
My
just
birthday.
talked. Yeah. Dude,
Can't remember your wife's birthday.
I can't. Yeah, dude, I'm so bad. So bad.
No. Well, this has been an awesome
Love you,
conversation. It's been an awesome conversation, Brett. Kind of give you a second to help plug what you do. Where can people find, what's your company, what you do, and get a hold of you if they'd like to?
Oh, yeah. So, we have our Instagram where we post all of our projects. That's probably the best way to kind of check out what we're doing. If you want to get a sense of the flamethrower we're talking about and what does that all look like, it's at Advance Your Pool on Instagram, same on Facebook and YouTube, which we're, trying to beef up our libraries. We want to get the information out there. So yeah, find us on any of those platforms at Advance Your Pool. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you,
man.
Brett.
You've been an inspiration for us for several years, so it was an honor for us to have you in here and speak with you. And you changed our business back in the day, so hopefully, we can pay it forward and people get something out of this to change theirs. So thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We know that your time is valuable and we appreciate you spending that with us. Also, if you guys missed episode 30, we discussed how we are now doing Pool Chasers full time. We're super excited for it, guys. It's a very big step as husbands and as fathers, but we truly believe in the message. We 100% believe in the Pool Chasers community. So we launched our Patreon page. So if the podcast has brought you any value at all, please consider donating financially. Every little bit helps. We're very committed to bringing you guys the best content possible. This will help us go out and get that content for you. So if you believe in the podcast as much as we do and you want to sign up to be a patron, go to patreon.com/poolchasers. That's patreon.com/poolchasers. This would mean the world to us, guys. We truly appreciate your time and your ear. We will not take it for granted. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, please email us at poolchasers.info@gmail.com. Please take the time to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you have not checked out the Facebook group yet, please do so. It's awesome in there. Also, if you could take a little bit of time to go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and review us, that would really help us out there. So thank you guys so much for the support. We appreciate all of you so much.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.